Hi, it's Andy.
Hi, it's Dave.
Hi, it's Kirk.
And we are back with album review time. Today's album we are checking out we have checked out, is Candlemass, and the song or the album's called Sweet Evil Son. Yeah, good, thanks. I'm just making sure I did react or review the right album.
Right, yes.
We're going to go in order, give our feedback. I am not a Doom guy. Was this Doom? Gothic Doom? I'm guessing genre-wise.
Traditional Doom, I think you term this Candlemass as.
As this is your pick, I think you should go last, Andy, for this week. So if I go first and then Kirk can take it after me. So going through the album, I wrote a few kind of bullet point notes. I wrote theatrical goth metal was basically the best way I could. That was the first thing. Listening to the first song, I was like, very theatrical, goth metal. Then I wrote Doom. Then I wrote new wave of British heavy metal at points. So I definitely heard like 80s influences in there. And I know that Candlemass were around in the 80s. Vocally, I had hints of Dio in there. Very I think that's where I get the theatrical vibe from. Is his vocal performance. It's very storytelling. Also like not quite a Bruce Dickinson, but you could hear that again, that theatricality in the vocal performance. Really liked Angel Battle. Good rocking track there. I thought that was my favorite track of the album. Saying that was the only track I picked out of the album. What I found going through it, for me, it felt very samey throughout. I got to the end of the album and I just felt I'm just hearing the same thing coming at me over and over again. The next one I wrote was dated. It sounds dated. It sounds like an older album. It doesn't sound like something that came out in today's modern production standards. It's well produced, but it sounds like an 80s album. And what surprised me was, after hearing this, it moved on to another album of theirs, which was Epicus, Doomicus, Metallicus, and I thought it was the same album. And that came out in 1986. And I was like, I didn't realise it got onto this album, and I thought I was on the same album that just came out. So
wow, that's interesting.
This is where it becomes one of those debates that we've talked about I like bands that show progression. Some people like bands that stick within their genre, and this is a band for me that knows what they want to do. They know what their fans like, and they've delivered another album that sounds like something that their fans would go for. For me, it just sounds like in 36 years, in the last 36 years, they haven't moved any further forward. They are just doing the same that they've always done. And I don't know what albums came in between, if they've done any changes. It might be like where they had significant changes and then decided to go back to a classic sound. That may have been what happened, but I was so surprised when I was listening to this 1986 album going, he's vocally, he sounds the same. Great, amazing. But I'm not sure I want to listen to a 1986 album in 2022 being released from 2022. I'd rather just go back and listen to the 1986 album because that's of that time. That's my thought on the album. Kirk?
Yeah, so Andy, we better address Epicus, Doomicus, Metallicus, which is credited with inventing doom metal. Obviously, we draw all this back to Black Sabbath and Candlemass. When you look at the influence of Black Sabbath, you can actually pinpoint certain subgenres to specific Sabbath songs. So we know that stoner metal and stoner rock is basically taken from that song Sweetly from the 1971 album Master of Reality. Candlemass really takes songs like Electric Funeral by Black Sabbath from, again, the 1971 album, but Paranoid, which came out in the same year and preceded Master of Reality. So the riffs on this album are epic. If you're going into this thinking this is doom metal, ringing fifth chords, really slow, vocals that are really introspective, this is the complete opposite. So Dave, you're right. There's clearly a new album, new wave of British heavy metal element to this band, isn't there? Epic power metal in stages, but they're just using these ultra heavy rocking metal riffs. So like that first song, Wizard of the Vortex, as soon as I heard that, the first 10 seconds, I was thinking, this is going to be a top album. And the first half of the record is sensational. I really loved Angel Battle as well. And there's a moment in that song where they just keep playing with tempos and they do that classic trick that Led Zeppelin do on Dazed and Confused and Black Sabbath do on Iron Man, where they're playing at a faster tempo and then from nowhere just slow it right down to the original riff. and the amount of vibrato and palm muting brutality in the string action is fantastic. So I'm not concerned that this sounds like a typical Candlemass album. They're one of those bands where you know what you're going to get, and you actually just want that. If they would start experimenting and bring in synthesizers or analog keyboards, I'd be worried, because I don't think they would really have the musical knowledge or appreciation to be drawing from good artists if they were to do that. So absolutely fantastic, the first half. The second half does go on a bit, doesn't it, Andy? I think we mentioned this. It almost breaches the 1 hour mark. And the vocals, Johan Lankvist, who actually, this is only his second album with the band. So Dave, you said his vocals haven't changed. It's a different person on the vocals for this album. But I thought...
Well, you can see why he's in the band then, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. I thought in stages, and an Angel Battle is a good example, but also on that song, Crucified and Devil Voodoo, he's got elements of Chris Cornell from Soundgarden in there as well, that really raw, bluesy husk to his voice, as well as the theatrics that, yeah, like you said, Ronnie James Dio. Really, this is Black Sabbath of the Heaven and Hell era, isn't it? That you would compare it to. Scandinavian Gods, great chorus. Goddess, the last song, great chorus. There's some real interesting elements of 70s rock in the choruses, where you're almost expecting to hear an organ to enhance the sound of it as well. And I said in my review, this is the type of music that will help you kick your crack cocaine habit, and I've never had one, by the way, but I can just imagine someone waking up, there's pizza boxes discarded all over the floor, and various people in states of catatonia or inertia who are out of it. And then you have this music in your head, and then you're looking at everything on the floor and the mess that people have made and the mess of your own life. And this will make you get on the straight and narrow. But one final thing before I pass it over to Andy, I'll just say the quality of the riffs, absolutely colossal. The shapes, the jagged edges of them, the techniques, the slides on the fretboard, the vibrato, they really are bringing some top quality heavy metal and rock to this. And, we even get a few pinch harmonics in there as well. So not disappointed at all by this album. I thought it was excellent, considering that they're always going to be compared to that legendary 1986 record that pretty much sets up the whole modern doom metal genre.
Andy, wrap it up for us.
Sure. Dave, it's really interesting that when you finished this album, your music streaming platform took you to Epicus, Doomicus, Metallicus, because it is the same vocalist. I don't know if Johan Lindqvist has done an album in between, but he done the vocals on Epicus, Doomicus, and obviously he's the vocalist on this album. Whether he's, I think he's done a few live shows, hasn't he?
Oh, sorry, I got it wrong then, didn't I? I didn't realise.
Yeah, they brought back the very original vocalist. I mean, I don't think he's even a full member of the band. He's credited as just guest vocals. He doesn't appear in the band photo or anything. So
really, okay.
So that's really interesting, and maybe that's why your Spotify or whatever sort of picked the next one. But I'm a massive fan of early Candlemass. I had all the demos on cassette when I've done trading and the Nemesis album. So I sort of grew up with like the Messiah Marklin albums and everything. The 2005 self-titled album was the last Candlemass album I have got and listened to. So I don't know the ones in between the Robert Lowe albums or anything like that. This one, it took a few listens, to be honest, for me to really sort of appreciate it. I think you mentioned, Kirk, there's almost the classic Candlemass sound, the single note, slow, head nodding, crushing riffs that Candlemass are known for. There's also the new wave of British heavy metal, just sort of standard traditional rock, faster tempo songs, which I think have featured in previous albums as well, that I may have heard the odd song from, which kind of turned me off a little bit. I like the classic sound, those memorable riffs. I mean, there are some memorable choruses and some really catchy songs. David, you mentioned you thought it was a bit samey towards the end. I've noted down that Goddess,
Okay.
I thought, as my Spotify messed up the playback of the songs, this is the same one again, but it's not. It's very, very similar to another one. But yeah, some really, really good songs in there. One thing that I didn't particularly like, in When Death Sighs, the chorus, the vocals go to this strange higher range. It sounds like he's struggling a little bit, and it just doesn't really work, because it's not just the odd note in a phrase of the song. It's almost the whole chorus is this, really, really high. That doesn't work. But the classic, the songs are sporadic. Some I really like and some I don't like. Angel Battle is a good one. It's the middle ones, I think. Beginning and the end are a little weak for my part, but the sort of middle 3 or 4 songs have, if not in their entirety, the classic Candlemass, really heavy, slow, head-banging riffs, which I really like. If they were to produce an 8-song, 50-minute album that was solely that, which does hark back to the early days, David. You said how they developed as a band and what they're trying to sort of, put out to their fans. It's a mixture, this particular one, but they could have created, a solid album of solely classic Candlemass. So they've mixed up a little bit, which kind of, didn't score highly for me, but there are some really good elements, really good songs.
Okay.
And it's one that's going to take a few more listens for me to really appreciate it fully, but it's a good one, and it may sort of prompt me to sort of fill in the gaps in my collection, as it were, because the Messiah marketing ones from the 80s and the 90s are absolute classics, and there's probably some really good ones that I haven't even heard, which I ought to check out.
Yeah, Dave, am I right? Do I speak for both of us? We don't want an album that's 56 minutes with an average BPM of 80, do we? 80
No.
BPM, that will bore the shit out of us. So that's why I liked that song, Crucified, at track 8, because that's one of the songs that actually goes in the opposite direction, and that starts like a galloping traditional heavy metal song, doesn't it? And then they slow it down. And
Exactly,
you're right, Dave. Gothic is a key word here, because I noted there that really slows down to quite a morbid Gothic doom metal dirge, and I really enjoyed that. And then they bring it back at the end. So I remember writing down here, this is for fans of the My Dying Bride 1996 album, Like Gods of the Sun. You will love this record. Obviously Black Sabbath, Master of Reality, and that Chicago band Trouble, their self-titled major label debut from 1991. Excellent album. And Candlemass and Trouble are, to me, the gods of doom metal. Black Sabbath are just too important to be put in one category, aren't they? We credit them, obviously, with being the first metal band, and they've influenced so many different styles. So, yes, everything goes back to Sabbath, but Candlemass and Trouble, for me, are the gods of this genre.
I mean, I think for long albums, you can get away with a long album if a track has got certain speed changes, certain elements. So if I was to talk about a band, let's say Nightwish, Poet and the Pendulum, that's a great track. It's 10 minutes roughly long or something like that, but has so many different parts to it. It's almost made up of 4 parts. I can go with that. I can go with a 15-20 minute song when it's made up of multiple parts. I find it difficult for a whole doom album when it's that slow. I can deal with a doom track, but not a whole album of that. It's just what I find difficult. Just to pick up on one point, so Johan was also on the last album, The Door to Doom, which came out in 2019. So he's been back for the last album as well, and is officially listed as vocalist rather than guest vocalist. So I was just having a look at their timeline of band lineups. Holy crap, this is the biggest family tree lineup I have ever seen for any band ever, because there seems to be there's 6 separate vocalists in all that period of time, and it's all these different lineups of different people that have joined. It's not too bad for guitarists, but even guitarists, they seem to have changed. Lead guitarists, they've had 5 lead guitarists. No, sorry, 6 lead guitarists according to this.
It's not bad for 36 years, though, is it?
It's not bad. Metallica would argue that point, probably, but Dave Mustaine's up there. He's giving it a run for its money, probably. But right, we need to score this then. So we obviously got our 4 scoring categories. We've got bin it, trade it, stream it, and of course buy it if you really love the album. I'll kick this one off as always. So for me, it is of course going to be a trade it. It's a good album. It's just not something I'm ever going to really listen to. So I would trade it to someone who would really like it. So, Andy, I'm going to trade this with you probably. But Kirk, what would you do?
I'll buy it.
Okay.
Yeah, I will buy it. Screen Blast Repeat, we give this 8 out of 10 as well.
Nice.
The only thing that would stop me from buying it is I don't have any of their other records in physical format. But yeah, if I was in HMV and this was stocked in the metal section, yeah, I'd be picking this up.
Fair enough. Andy, what would you do?
It's not a shoe-in, buy it, but if I saw it in HMV for a good price, I would pick it up. But HMV are not renowned for their good prices, are they? You know, there's probably about £16 in there, but yeah, I would. I'll be seeking this out to purchase as a physical copy. Yeah.
Okay, so 2 buy it's and 1 trade it. So it's a buy it for the channel, I guess. And that is the Candlemass review for this week. Now, if you like the video, please do subscribe, click the bell icon, like and share. We'll see you on another video sometime very soon. Take care.